Hello, all my writing friends out there. I'm so glad to see you today. It is a wonderful day to talk about words and writing and how to make money off your words and how to get to be an even better writer. So I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're joining me. We're going to be talking about one of my absolute favorite topics today. We're going to be talking about the stupid rules and the smart rules that you should be using when you are in your writing. I think we've all been poisoned by that one teacher who just nailed in one or two rules that you use that you are committed to using that actually are harming your writing as opposed to helping your writing. And so I'm gonna hopefully disavow you of some of those rules. I'm gonna remove them from your brain, and it's gonna clear up your writing. Before we jump in, just a reminder. Next month, I'll be hosting a 2-hour intensive on how to write emails that people actually want to read. Name's TBA, coming up with that, and I'll give you the date. If you want to stick with me on that one, just jump into my Substack, subscribe to that, and more announcements will come there. Second thing, if you would like to see me teaching live, you can come to Providence, Rhode Island for Thomas Plummer's writing school. I'll be teaching on email marketing. I'll be teaching on how to get your book from idea to actually conception or to having a book in your hands. So those are the two things. That's the Plummer Writing School is June 20th through the 23rd. So that's in Providence, Rhode Island. That is live. It's hands-on. It's one of the best writing schools you will ever attend. All right, now let's jump into the stupid rules that you were taught that we just need to break. So first off, the first one I really like to think about is never start with and, but, or so. You should never start a sentence with and, but, or so. And I think it's for good reason. Oftentimes people start a sentence with and, but, or so, and the and, but, or so is unnecessary. You actually don't need to have that in your sentence. That you have two independent clauses that can be, or sentences that don't need connection. And you can just put a period there and a capital letter, and everyone can move on with their life. Oftentimes, though, what happens is that a prolific writer, or someone who has a big idea to share, will write and they'll write and they'll write and they'll write, and you get what we love to call a run-on sentence. And the sentence would read better if you added a period, and it would also read better if you put an and or a but or a so there. You can also use your ands, buts, and so's as exclamations. I love to use but as a word break, almost like a mid paragraph headline, especially in my online writing. I'll put a paragraph, maybe 2 or 3 sentences, a but in the middle, and then another paragraph, and that just breaks the sentence or the page up for your reader. So don't think like you can't start with and, but, and so. That's an old school rule that pretty much no one cares about anymore, right? Now this one, my father-in-law will kill me for saying, but you can. The rule is, don't end a sentence with a preposition, right? And so the rule, as far as I've ever researched it, were two grammarians who got bored one day and said, you know what we should do? We should require that no one end a sentence with a preposition, right? And so a sentence with a preposition would be, what did you do that for, right? As opposed to saying, why did you do that, right? Typically, it's actually a good idea not to end a sentence with a preposition because it weakens your sentence. It makes it sound less good, right? But there's a great quote. I think it's Winston Churchill. Hold on, I should have pulled this up a little bit earlier. Oh no. Here we go. We're just gonna cut this part out. Here we go. Yes. It's a sentence that Winston Churchill may or may not have ever written. He said, this is the kind of errant pedantry up with which I will not put. Fantastic sentence. But you know what? If you were thinking about ending your sentences with prepositions, I'd say, hey, you can go for it. You can do that. Just understand why you're doing it and what it does to your words. What did you do that for? Right? It doesn't round out the thought. It's colloquial, so if you were writing a character and the character would say, what'd you do that for? go for it. But if you want to have a stronger sentence, you say, why did you do that? There you go. Now, this is an interesting one. And this is one I think most people don't necessarily care about any longer. I think it's one I haven't heard for a long time. But the idea is this. You should not ever split a infinitive. You got me on that one. You should not ever split a infinitive. So what to split an infinitive is the famous sentence is to boldly go where no man has gone before. Okay, so the infinitive to boldly go. That's splitting the infinitive. The to verb, so to go, is split by boldly. So in Star Trek, it should say, according to this rule, to go boldly where no man has gone before. But to go boldly where no man has gone before is it's a you got a lot to chew on, as opposed to boldly go where no man has gone before. I don't understand this rule. I think it goes back to Latin, actually, so it harkens back to our roots as a language. And so I don't think you really need to pay attention to this one. If it sounds good, if it reads well, if your audience gets it, that's all you need to know. That's all that you should really be caring about, because the point of grammar and the point of you writing is to communicate. And if your audience gets it, then there you go. If, however, it hinders your audience from understanding, if it sounds bad in the ear, if it doesn't feel right when you say it, those are reasons to pay attention to grammar. Grammar helps us understand where things should go and how things should sound and all of that. And so it's important to actually stick to the grammar rules, but you understand them so that you can break them. Okay? The next one. There's a weird rule in formal writing that you should not use contractions, like can't, won't, etc. It's again, that's one that has been mostly thrown out the window, with one exception. And this is I'm pulling from Dreyer's English, Benjamin Dreyer. Would've, could've, should've. Those are just they sound bad. They sound not as great as would have, should have, could have. So if you're going to use a contraction, go for it, with the exception of would have, should have, could have. If your character, again, if you're writing a fiction piece or you're writing dialogue, if your character would say that, maybe they would actually say woulda, like W-O-U-L-D-A, like I would have done that, as opposed to I would have done that. That's a small thing, but it looks really weird on the page. Like, go into your text editor or go into your phone and write would have. It looks weird on the page, and it's really hard to say. Like, say would have 10 times fast, and you're just going to be destroyed. It's bonkers, okay? Now, this one's my favorite. This is the thing I get so mad at when I'm editing. It's the thing that plagues every writer, and it's the passive voice, right? The passive voice is to be avoided. So what is the passive voice? The passive voice is this: mistakes were made. I made mistakes. Or the children were terrified by the clown, as opposed to the children, or the clown terrified the children. What it is you put typically the action at the end of the sentence as opposed to the beginning or the middle. And it sounds, it's the worst. It slows down your writing. It makes your reader confused. It removes all oomph and zeal and momentum that you've built up over your sentences and your words and your paragraphs, and people just, it puts the brakes on. So avoid the passive voice. The passive voice is not your friend. And now you might be thinking like, oh gosh, I don't even know how to identify if I'm using the passive voice. So here are a few tricks. If you can add by zombies at the end of your sentence, you've probably used the passive voice. It's a funny trick. Mistakes were made by zombies. I made a mistake by zombies. See, mistakes were made by zombies. That's the passive voice. I made a mistake by zombies. Doesn't make sense. It's the active voice. You're good to go. There's also a list that I've accumulated of red flag words that say, hey, you know what? You're probably using the passive voice. And so a few of them, if it's a self-aware passive voice, so it's like in your head if your character's thinking or whatnot, it's words like knew, realized, felt. Those are problematic words. Other words, like telling words. So if you're trying to tell a story, these are show, don't tell. You want to remove any words such as when, as, to, which, because, any to be verbs, emotional red flag verbs. Those could be, actually, let's skip that part. Descriptive red flag words and phrases. I realized, I could see, the sound of, the feel of, the smell of, tried to, trying to, in order to make. Again, anything that just kind of it makes it look backwards or removes action from a scene, you want to get rid of it. It's not helpful, right? So again, the simple way to think about it is if you can add by zombies to the end of your sentence, it's a passive voice and you need to rework it. Okay. Now, this is a fun one. Sentence fragments. They tend not to be liked. I call them VSSs, or very short sentences, and I love them. If you use them with intention, if you use them purposefully, they can drive home a point. I actually think you should throw in a VSS. You should sprinkle them in like seasoning into your writing. I think they're incredibly important. They break up your writing, they punch things home, and they are authoritative. If you are an entrepreneur and you are writing for someone, if I read a paragraph, if I read a sentence that looks like a paragraph, I start to nod off. But if you tell me in 5 words or less, boom, you hit me with that. That drives home the point. It says like, hey, I think this. I believe this. This is how things are. That's what you want. That's how you get people. It's not by waxing poetic. Sometimes, of course, you need longer sentences, but 5-word sentences or fewer sentence fragments, I think they are not only important in online writing and modern writing, they are necessary. You have to use them. Now, the last one, this one's just a kind of a personal point of love. I love these things. They're dashes. So you got to know which dash to use. Now, you might think, what's the difference between a dash and a hyphen? Let me enlighten you. M dashes, that's the longer dash. Then you have N dashes, which is a shorter dash. And then you have hyphens, which are kind of tiny. Most of the time, an M dash, so the longer dash, is going to interrupt something, right? So if you put 2 dashes on your keyboard or on a Mac, I think it's Option Shift dash, that's going to give you the M dash. That interrupts. It works great in dialogue, like say someone's saying something and then a boulder comes crashing down, you would use an M dash. It also interrupts your own thinking. So you put a dash in, say something else, and then put another dash in. It takes the place of sometimes of commas in more modern writing. It also takes the place of a semicolon often, because the semicolon it's a confusing piece of calligraphy, I guess, or of typography. It's a piece that most people don't use, and a lot of readers feel intimidated by it, and a lot of writers feel intimidated by it. So instead, we just use the M dash, that longer dash. So I love it. Use it well. Don't overuse it. Like, I think if you look at a page, it shouldn't be in every paragraph. I would avoid using it more than once or twice in a sentence, right? So or in one paragraph. The N dash, what the N dash is going to do, it's going to hold words together. Okay, so language always evolves. Language evolves, and the tendency is for words to come together. So, example, email, right? Started with electronic mail. Then we took away the most of electronic, and that was mail, right? And then we decided, you know what? This is getting even closer, and we said en dash mail. And now it's just email, right? There's no dashes at all. And so a dash is going to hold words together. If you have a series of words that go together, like around the clock, that can be en dashed together to make it feel like one tight word. So that's kind of the purpose of the en dash. I don't think the en dash typically gets abused like the m dash does, but know when to use them, right? Again, m dashes interrupt, n dashes hold words together, and then hyphens, there's very few situations that you as a modern writer are going to run into that are going to require a hyphen versus an n dash. So I would say don't even worry about it. Just think about n and m dashes, and that's it. Those are my pet peeves. Those are the things that bother me when it comes to writing. I think that grammarians and people who are super into being nitpicky, like, hey, if that's your thing, go for it. You can sound how you want to sound. That's your writing voice. But don't stick to rules just because them's the rules, right? You gotta express yourself. That's what writing is all about. And so know the rules, know when to bend them, know what's changing and shifting, and enter into your writing with joy, right? The goal of your writing is not to sound like everyone else. The goal of your writing is to stand out. It's to use your voice. It's actually, I think, harder to develop a writing voice than it is a speaking voice, because writing voices, all you have really are the words and the punctuation. Speaking, I get movement, I get intonation, I get inflection, I get volume, pauses, things like that. You have to be more creative when it comes to the page. And so don't hamstring yourself when it comes to writing just because there's a rule that your ninth grade teacher taught you. You want texture in your writing because that's what a voice is, right? You can change tenses, right? You can go from first person to second person to third person, all within one paragraph, because that's how people actually talk. When you are writing, you don't stick. We tend to stick in one tense the whole time, and in reality, when you're talking and you're conveying a story, people switch all the time. I just did. If you go back and listen, I intentionally switched from me to you to they, all in one chunk of thought. That's how we talk and that's how we communicate. And so feel free to enter into those things. Feel free to use and abuse your writing in order to communicate well, in order to hook people, in order to get your point across so you can help more people. That is the idea for today, my friends. I want to know, if you made it this far, what are your favorite pet peeves about writing? What are the things that you're like, oh my gosh, I either hate seeing that in a book, or I hate it when someone picks on that idea? I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. But hey, as always, enough for now. Go write something.